Osei-Agyekum. I'm the publisher and founder of African Bureau Stories. We are a small children's publishing house based out of Accra, doing incredibly exciting work, publishing really beautiful stories for children, working with writers and illustrators from across the African continent. Before African Bureau Stories, I ran an organization for over 10 years, Golden Baobab. It was a nonprofit that I started, and we were known for our literature prize that we run, finding and supporting African writers and illustrators. As well, I am a partner at Accord Literary, which is a literary agency that finds, supports, trains African authors and makes connections to international publishing opportunities. The past 12 years of my career have had a common thread, and that has been this passion and commitment to advancing African children's literature. And I have a big why behind this. On the one hand is my evident love for literature and for children's books. I don't think you could do this kind of work for this long without caring about the subject at hand. But on a more deep level is my commitment to almost addressing the injustice that I feel occurs when children don't have access to books that they can see themselves in. When market systems aren't delivering what the market looks like, when market systems have been set up to almost discriminate who can see themselves in which books. I feel a deep sense of almost infuriation, frustration that something that simple hasn't been solved to date. I grew up loving a lot of books, but not really seeing characters like myself in those books. And fine, I had a great childhood, filled with, Nancy Drew and Sweet Valley and Babysitters Clubs, etc. But why were none of those characters people who look like me from Lagos or Harare or Lesotho or Botswana? And how much more rich would my childhood be if that was the case? And it's one of those subtle differences, but if the world looks a certain way, why do the books that we publish not look that way? And why do some people's story seem to not matter as much as others? So this is my almost my driving. It's my life's work. It's my driving force. It's the thing that I hope we can together eradicate within our generation, so that moving forward, as the world goes ahead and advances on all of these critical things like artificial intelligence and robotics and commercial space travel, something as fundamental as African children being able to see themselves in books they absolutely love, and for those books to be easily accessible, and for children all over the world to be able to have access to these books, for there to be a book as transformational as Harry Potter for children being written by an African author or illustrator, right? For there to be an African Enid Blyton whose work just touches children for many years, for there to be a children's version of Chinua Achebe or Chimamanda whose work really puts the continent's body of children's literature on a global pedestal. I feel like that world should exist, and that's what drives me. I'm incredibly proud of the work we do at African Bureau Stories. We are a small but mighty press, and the few years that we've been around, our books have won some of the most important prizes in literature, which really gives us, I can't describe it, it gives us so much energy towards the vision that we have. So last year we were really proud to win the Bologna Prize for Best Publisher from Africa. It's a huge deal. That's a prize that's voted for by colleague publishers from around the world. So our work to be recognized on such a global scale was incredibly important to us. Our best-selling title, Grammars List, won the Children's Africana Book Award as the best children's book from Africa published in the US. We've translated our books into several languages. They're available in multiple countries. For a press this small and a list this small, we're incredibly proud of what we've been able to achieve, and our commitment is to continue to create opportunities for African authors and illustrators to have their work be seen and to have their books into children's hands. Literary agency is Accord. Accord does such exciting work. Our current partnership with Norton Young Readers is quite almost historic. We signed a 6-book deal with Norton that will, over the next 2 years, have released globally 6 African authors who haven't yet been published internationally. And our work at Golden Baobab has had a 10-year commitment to supporting children's books and African writers and illustrators. Our commitment in the space of diverse books is to really advance African literature for children as part of that conversation. Over the past couple of years, I've been really excited by the diverse book movement that has come up. When we started the Literature Prize in 2008, the movement didn't exist. It was very much a silent problem. So at the time, I guess I'll just give a brief history of how I started my first organization, Golden Baobab. I grew up in Ghana, loved to read, and after high school, I got a scholarship to go to the US. And while I was there, I met a woman who wanted to build a library in Ghana, and my life had been changed by libraries that had been built by people who wanted to help. So I wanted to give back. So I got involved with that organization, collected some books, and we shipped them to Ghana. And the process wasn't so difficult that I thought, if I can keep collecting these books and I can just keep finding ways to partner with people to get them to schools and libraries in Ghana, it can make the kind of impact that books had on me for so many other children, and it doesn't take that much time for me to be able to do that. So I started an organization on my student campus, on my campus, and we would collect books, donate, we would do fundraisers, donate to support schools, libraries, etc. Along the way, one time we were packing the books and I came across one with pictures of a little black girl, and of the thousands of books we had sent, it was the first one that I was coming across that showed pictures that looked like the children who would receive the books. And that really got me thinking to, why I had grown up largely on American, UK, Canadian books, and 20 years later, I want to help literacy in African, and it's the same books. Like where were the African children's books, and why couldn't we get those to children? So the question of diverse books for me was awakened in that moment. There was one time I remember very clearly. I was taking an African literature class. I attended Bryn Mawr College, so it's a liberal arts women's college in the on the East Coast, largely predominantly white, very diverse, but predominantly white. And in my college, in the classroom, I was being African. My professor, my colleagues would expect me to have additional insight on the topics we were discussing because, well, evidently it's my culture, right? But I didn't have insights. The books we were referencing, I hadn't read those books. And so in that moment, in that classroom, I didn't know my stories. My colleagues didn't know my stories. I knew their stories. I had read their books, and they had read their books too. So there was a me and a window into my world, my people, that was missing. And why should that window be missing? And again, at that time, the conversation about diverse books wasn't happening. So there wasn't something to latch onto was just this oddity, and it's like, wait a second, this really is so off and so wrong. So the diverse books movement is so important to me, because for me, what it represents is people like awakening together to this crisis, where, you know, it does not make sense for us to be advancing so much technologically, health-wise, etc. But when it comes to issues of diversity, representation, racial equity, you know, we stagnation, particularly because technology is making the solutions to these issues that much more accessible. There are market reasons why there weren't diverse books 10, 20 years ago, because books are so difficult and so expensive to publish. You've got to do really large print runs. You don't have a way to market directly to people who will buy those books, etc. So publishers found it difficult to make investments into those kinds of books. They didn't have access to diverse professionals, diverse authors, illustrators who could help to make those books happen. All of that has changed. So what the movement for me means is that together, those of us who care, those of us who are committed to see a different kind of world, to tell our stories, to be celebrated in books for children all over the world, can gather momentum to make that possible. And my dream is for this problem to be eradicated in our generation, like for a generation to come to say, wait, what? There was a time when we didn't have enough books for, you know, that we couldn't find our books everywhere. Like, what kind of world was that? So that's what the movement means to me. I think from my stand, being an African literature, children's literature champion, an advocate and publisher, is that the conversation of diverse books sometimes can sometimes be a little too broad stroke. Evidently, the biggest children's publishing industry is the US publishing industry. So this conversation is happening largely from a US perspective, and that's very kind of like historically racially charged. So, you know, it's white versus, or, you know, white vis-a-vis black, brown, Latina, Asian, Indian, etc., and African American, right, and black. But the African American experience and that black experience is not the African experience, right? And within that kind of that broad stroke of black and of African American is African, right? Is Caribbean, and all of those experiences are totally different. And should Black American children not know the joy of childhood in Ghana, and not be able to have a character that they absolutely adore, you know, who is from Kigali, right, and have those adventures there. And for me, you know, that's one of the things I hope, you know, our work and our thought leadership on this issue can bring to bear. The fact that, you know, even within diverse books, there's diversity, and we have to be cognizant of that, because then we can get to a point where there may be lots of like African American books, but there may not be enough African books, right? There may not be enough Indian American books, there may not be enough Asian books. So it's important that the diversity within the diversity be recognized. There's a question that comes across from time to time about whether the diverse book movement is just a trend. Will it last? Will it bring lasting change? And you know, my background a little bit is in economics, and market forces, for me, like, I believe that that's how the world works. So for me, this problem of lack of diversity is it's not a racist problem. It's an institutional racism problem, but it's largely like fixing institutional racism may not fix lack of diverse books, but fixing the economics of diverse books, of publishing, can solve this problem directly. And what it is that the demand needs to meet supply, right? So there just needs to, if tomorrow we all went into the bookstores and bought out, we bought every single copy of every diverse book in the bookshop, and like publishers sold out, guess what? They would reprint those books ASAP the very next day and immediately commission 5 more of those titles, right? In which case it would have been demand and supply that had solved that problem. We can still be as racist as we want, but publishers and the economic system of publishing will respond to demand. So whether it's a fad or not, I think it's up to us as consumers, and whether we will be activists with our purchasing power, right? Will we be intentional about buying the kinds of books that change the trends of what publishers are buying? And this is not only up to Black, brown, and diverse people, minorities. No, it's up to all of us conscious people who realize that, listen, there is an injustice in the fact that people are being discriminated in their in whose stories are told. And we can change that with what we purchase. We can change that with the books we request at our local public libraries. We can change that with like the YouTube videos that we watch of picture books, right? And so whether it's a fad or not is in our hands. I don't think anyone can particularly say. The thing that gives me a lot of excitement is that there has been a lot of really incredible organizing around this. Organizations have been built, social media communities, institutional things have also been done where publishers are intentionally investing in Black, Asian, minority, ethnic authors, and illustrators. So whether it's a fad or not, we probably have turned that corner a little bit with all of the organizing that's happened, but I think we can't forget and overlook the responsibility that we have to buy diverse, because it's demand that will ultimately keep supply flowing. Can anyone be a writer? Yeah, anyone can be a writer. There's an art and a science to writing. It's not, we're not in a time where the technicalities of writing children's books haven't, are hidden behind a, like a glass screen. There's just an incredible amount of resources online, resources in terms of actual guidelines on the writing process, people's testimonials of how they've gone, people's testimonials of their journeys, writers, illustrators, communities, and I think whether one can become a writer or not is one's intention on writing. And once you set your intention, I think there's an abundance of resources to support it. On my perspective on this is from the African side, and that question has, over 10 years when we ran the literature prize, the question was like, will you write African children's books? Consider it, because at the time we started, a lot of the writers who were submitting stories to our literature prize were not African children's book writers. Like, they weren't children's writers, they had never written before. But because of this award and this almost opportunity, they decided to challenge themselves. So the short answer to this question is, I think anyone can be a writer if you set the intention of being a writer. The next thing I'll probably add is to really be clear your why you want to be a writer. Because if you're setting on the journey, like again from the African perspective, in an industry that isn't super developed with its own kind of paths, like this is the path that you go on to do this, and you have to in some ways define it. I mean, also for a lot of diverse authors, I think it's a little bit the same thing, like finding the publishers who are eager to take on your books. You might not have as much opportunity as a mainstream Caucasian writer. So I think setting your intention, like why are you writing? Are you writing because you want to just have your book out? You just want to see a book out? Are you writing because you want your community, your children, your family, extended and friends to be able to have access to that book? Are you writing because you really want to grow your skill? Are you writing because you want to get your book to as many places as possible? Are you writing because you dream of being a writing star? What your intention is will inform what path you should be on. I'm stressing on this quite a bit because I've been in recent conversation with a friend who started writing, and at every point she would have a question as to what do I do next, and the what to do next was always because the intention wasn't clear. And I would use the example of music, right? If I discover that I have musical talent, or I think I can sing, or I want to sing, or I want to learn how to sing, where do I want to land is what will determine what path I take next in this desire for music in my life, right? If I want to lead the choir in my church, that determines what I have to do. If I want to just say great in the shower, that determines what I want to do. If I want to be the next Beyonce, that determines what I have to do. And so without being clear on that intention, we can really get lost in the path, and it's a long journey. So without that clarity, you can lose your focus and lose your drive before you even arrive. So it feels almost like super light and like super soft, and like, but I think it's the most important thing. Like, know your why, know where you're trying to land with your writing career, and be committed to whatever it takes. Because listen, the person who wants to be Beyonce, who wants to be the next Beyonce, I mean, good luck to you, because that journey and that path is going to be backbreaking. And if you're committing to that destination, it means you're committing to that path, right? The person who wants to sing in their church choir, I mean, it depends on how great that choir is, but you will have a path with its own kind of challenges. And the person who just wants to sing in their shower will also have a different kind of challenge and responsibility. And I think that's the part of the conversation that we don't often talk about at the very onset of someone's interest. And I feel like as a result, we lose a lot of people who could have become committed writers on one level or another. And also people can grow. The church choir person could be the next Beyonce, etc. So that point, I feel like shouldn't be overlooked. What advice would I give to new and budding writers? Learn the craft. There is an art and there is a science to writing children's books. And art and science is learned equally, right? Although the technicalities of science might make it a more precise execution than art, both of it can be learned. So learn the art and craft of writing children's books. Read a ton of children's books. Read a ton of children's books. Gauge what delights you. If you have children in your life, read with children. Gauge what delights them. Gauge what captures them. Gauge what works. A very wise mentor of mine told me recently that nothing is difficult except that which we don't know how to do, right? If you don't know how to drive, for example, it just seems like the most complicated thing. If you don't know how to build a robot, it just seems like Greek, right? But if you do, it just seems like doing your job. So I think the one advice I would give, again, similar to if someone said, I want to be a singer, learn how to sing, learn the art and science of singing, learn tone, learn stage performance, like learn all of it. And I think sometimes, the dream we have can, the glory of the dream can make us de-emphasize the need for the investment of effort to give us the result that we want. So read a lot, learn, take a course, buy a book, go through it, practice, edit, get editors to help you, join a writer's community till you get to the destination that you want. Can anyone become a published writer? Again, because this conversation is fresh in my mind with my friend who's now new into writing, that was her first question, like, can I be published? Can I be published locally? Can I be published globally? Can I win awards globally? What will it take? And I mean, like, when you're asking that question about something that you care about, the answers don't seem clear. But if you were to put it in a different context, again, a singer saying, can I sing? Yes, you can sing. Can I sing locally and internationally? Yes, you can sing locally and internationally, depending on what commitment you want to make to that party. Obviously, you can sing locally if you're willing to pound the pavement and get the gigs, right, and pound the pavement and get signed on a record label and deal with all of the rejections that come with that. Can you sing internationally? Yes, you can, if you're willing to put in the years of work to build your portfolio, build your skill set, do the concerts, do the features on people's music videos till you get to the point where you can hold your own. It's the same thing with writing, right? It's not something that can be handed to you. It's an incredibly competitive space. Like, writers from all over the world are fighting for attention from publishers. And what we also have to understand what writers have to understand from the publishing perspective is that publisher is an investor, right? If you approach me to publish your work in the most traditional sense of publishing, what you're asking me to do is to invest my hard-earned money and my time in your idea, right? Is to go on that journey with you, with the kind of expectation that once we do go on that journey together, that book can help me to recoup my money, and help me recoup it enough to be able to make new books with other people or with you. So that's not a task that a publisher takes lightly. I mean, also depending on the publisher, how big or small, how much money they have, but like, nobody just throws their money into something that they don't have certainty about or they're not excited about. So there's also that, finding that match, right, with a publisher who sees your vision, who appreciates your skill, your talent, and wants to go on that journey with you because he's confident he can recoup his investment to be able to do more. So can one be a published author? It's a scientific question. It's not a riddle. It's not a mystery. Obviously anyone can be, if you are willing to break it down, put in the work that is needed. Thank God for the power of technology and all of the information that we have online now. I think there's never been an easier time to be published as an author. There's never been an easier time to find the support group you need to build the kind of team that can help you to achieve that dream. There's never been an easier time to achieve it. But the thing that doesn't change from whether it's an easier time or back when it was a more challenging time is the commitment level that you're going to want to give to this as a craft and eventually as a career. The thing to know is that this kind of venture might be a little time greedy in the beginning without giving a similar return of investment on that time, right? Again, if someone wants to sing, like, you're not gonna make a whole, you don't quit your day job if you decide to be a singer tomorrow, right? Because that's just not how it works. So you've got to be committed enough, passionate enough to be willing to make the investment, whether it gives you the initial financial return or not, because it's a very capital hungry industry, and publishers invest a lot to be able to now pay a royalty back to authors if the books do well, and that's the publisher's gamble, right? So I think the other advice really would be, when we're entering the space, not to look at it too much like a riddle, like something that it's difficult to figure out, but it is a business. It is no matter of what you're willing to put in, depending on what you want to get out. So how does one build connections in this space with other writers and illustrators? I think the very first place to start would be on social media, whether be it LinkedIn, be it Instagram, be it Facebook, even Twitter. I think there are lots of subgroups that have organized around this to provide support to each other, and in communities like that, you will find people who are at different levels of their journey into publishing. So that's definitely a place where you can find support. There are also lots of freelancing professionals, and I mean, I don't know if that's like a secret hidden in plain sight, but to be honest, the professionals who work with the major publishers, many of them are freelancers, and they are out there with their services for hire. Obviously, you're going to have to invest, but then you get really high level professional results. So that's something that I would actively advocate to go online and find them and reach out to them. Like some of them will, if it's a picture book, for example, or even like a chapter book or a novel or whatever, they will read it first to tell you, what they think it can do, whether it's something that has legs. They will do a developmental edit with you, a structural edit with you, they'll do a copy edit with you, they'll help you to proofread your work to get it to a level where publishers will be willing to pay attention to it. If you decide to self-publish, also, you can basically build your own team. The resources are there. The experience levels of these professionals are also wide. You can pick and choose, again, depending on your destination, how much you want to invest because of what you're looking to get out of it. So I feel like that's an asset that our generation has, that like 3 generations, 2 generations, 1 generation ago you wouldn't have had, just because you wouldn't have had a way to find these professionals. I remember about 6-7 years ago when I first started, around when I was still young in my career, I was speaking with a Nigerian publisher, actually, Cassava Republic BB. I was in Nigeria for an event, and I think that weekend that I was there were a number of like literary things that were happening, and the energy around literature that I was seeing in Lagos, I wasn't seeing in Accra, and I was a little jealous. I was like, what is happening in Lagos? What tea are you drinking? Because we don't have the same energy in Accra. And BB said, well, Debbie, it's happening in Lagos here because we're making it happen. We're doing what we need to do to make it happen. We're organizing the events, we're bringing the speakers, and we're doing what we need to do to create the community that we want. So that was something that always stuck with me, because like obviously, like if you don't have the community, like there are 2 options: you wait till it comes, and you may be waiting for only God knows how long, or you create the community that you want to see. So that's also the other thing. Like, so for example, at the time we created a Facebook group called Illustrators of Accra. We created the community that we want to see. That there's enough community, but if you have a niche that you feel like isn't represented, again, we have the power of social media to help in organizing communities, and you can go ahead and create one for the niche that you recognize. What does it take to become successful as a writer? Maybe you've already been published, you've already self-published, you're a diverse book author, you're struggling to get into bookstores. What does it take? Again, I see it very clearly as demand and supply, right? At the point of which you already have your book and you're trying to be successful, the question you're asking is, how do I get more demand? I really recommend that, if you're a novice in a space, you really just break it down to the barest principles that you're the most familiar with, right? Don't try and be technical. Don't try and go at it from the perspective that you don't have. Don't try and focus on the knowledge that you don't have. Focus on the knowledge that you do have. You have a book, you have the supply, you need demand. How much demand do you need, right? Who do you want to, how many people do you want to buy your book? Where are those people, right? When do those people buy? What do they need to hear? How do you get yourself in front of them? What will it take? Who do you need to help you to be able to get in front of those people? And just break it to the barest principles and focus on that. For a movement like, for diverse authors who may not always have the support of the publishing machinery behind them, because they're still trying to break out. I think one of the most important things you can do for yourself is really just kind of breaking down to the fundamentals of what you're trying to achieve and doing that. Marketing is one of the most critical components of publishing. There's a phenomenon now where Amazon publicizes so much how easy it is to get a book on Amazon, and everybody's like, oh, my book is published, it's on Amazon. Okay, it got on Amazon. How many did you sell? Or you've been published by a publisher, but how many copies of the book is the publisher selling? So, if what it means is that you go online and you study what's made other authors successful, what's made other books successful, and you break it down, you give yourself time, you take it one point after another, you figure out what resources you have, what you can do towards point 1, point 2, point 3, that's what it's going to take for you to make that happen. If you have the resources to invest in professionals who have this experience, who can take that off of your shoulder and make it work for you, that's what it's going to require. I'll just be, just be cautious of professionals who can do this in terms of marketing, because marketing is not measured. Efficacy in marketing is not measured by, I sent out a press release, I put a post on Facebook, etc. Like, did that convert, right? So you may want to maybe work with people who are coming with references and recommendations, and even in speaking with them, you want to be super clear that, what I'm looking for is not just activity, but return on investment in terms of the people I want my book to reach. The other component of marketing is the publicity component, right? Just getting yourself in front of as many people as possible, whether that's immediately converting into sales or not. And that's something that, again, depending on your intention, right? The responsibility that a singer who wants to be Beyonce has in terms of publicity is very different from the responsibility that the choir, the one who wants to lead their choir, has. So be clear on your intention, and then again, map it out, right? If I wanted to be a choir director, whose radar do I have to be on? If I want to be Beyonce, whose radar do I have to be on, right? If I want to if I want to publish this, I've published this one picture book by myself, and I'm looking this year to sell 1,000 copies, right? Whose radar do I need to be on, right? Who do I know? Who's my community, and where can I find 1,000 parents, right? If I want to target libraries, like, how do I get them to order these 1,000 books for me? And if you're looking, or if you've been published by a big publisher and you're looking to do that kind of publicity, you should know that you're in the big leagues, right? So you really want your work and your publicity to have the kind of energy that can match what the publishers are investing themselves. So it's either you're getting professionals to do that, or you're really investing the time that it will take for you to figure out how to do that for yourself. So yeah, I think I can't stress enough that there isn't a riddle to it. It's all really just breaking it down to how and where, and the abundance of resources online, I feel like cannot be overstated. One thing that I will share from my experience is the importance of playing to your strength. You win nothing by playing your weakest cards. So in my case, for example, I came into when I started our literature prize, I wasn't coming from wealth. I was a scholarship student in college. I wasn't coming with years of experience in terms of branding a literature prize and like a professional team. I was coming as a college student with a lot of energy and friends who could help me, and that's what I played to. I played my inexperience by getting big name African literature professionals like writers, publishers, to join my advisory board and to be on our jury to make this possible. I didn't focus on how it's been done in the past because I didn't have that strength. I focused on what I had and how I could use what I had to get me as close as possible to what I want to see. In the case of our publishing house, for example, we don't have a major publishing and distribution infrastructure to get our books into the hands of children. So what that means is that we cannot design our publishing house to operate as an independent publishing house in the UK or the US who have major distributors getting their books out for them, designs their publishing house. We've got to play with our strengths, right? So what are some of our strengths, right? Where do people gather to buy books locally, that we can figure out who has the big money to spend, and how do we find a way to convince them to spend some of that on books. So those are the ways we're thinking. A big part of my experience is in fundraising, it's in partnership development. So how am I bringing that to play, and how I design my publishing house? So look at what your strengths are, what your career has been to date, what can you bring to this new challenge of becoming a successful writer, and play to your strengths. That's when you'll be the most creative, that's when you'll stand out, and that's when you can innovate and actually get results, because you'll be working with what you already have, rather than overstating the obvious fact that you don't have certain things to get to the destination. Another big question that I often get is, can I make money from this career? Again, if you're a budding musician and you want to know whether you can make money from the career, it's a wide spectrum, right? You can, again, we use the same examples, Queen Bee, or you can be singing in pubs, and the money you're making from those experiences are different. It's the same thing, right? You can be J.K. Rowling, who is an exception, one of, 10,000, or you can be the struggling writer who is getting $100, $500, $200 checks from your publisher every year as your royalty statement. I think the most important thing is to be realistic. You don't quit your day job at the onset. There are more people who are just eking almost a living out of writing than there are those who are making full-time careers out of it. So don't quit your day job till you have the kind of income coming in that you can use to support yourself. Again, you have to set your intention, right? If where you're trying to land is to make writing a full-time career, you're going to have a unique set of responsibilities that the person who's just writing as a hobby or doing a book or two a year isn't going to have, right? And in your case, you'll be studying people who made writing their career and what that path was, and like following that, and that's what will hopefully give you the return on investment that you want to see. So I would like to share a number of organizations that you can look at for opportunities in this space. There are lots and lots and lots of opportunities out there that people don't know about. So you're going to have to do your research. Again, one secret of the trade I will share with you is that when you come across opportunities that are kind of competitive opportunities, it's difficult sometimes to look at maybe where you are in that opportunity and say, if they were looking for XYZ person, like in the world, would it be me? The thing about competitions, though, is that you're not competing against the world. You're competing with the group of people who submit to that competition. So if they're looking for the best diverse writer in the New York region, it doesn't mean you technically have to be the best diverse children's book writer in the New York region. You just have to be the best among those who submit. And I feel like that's a perspective that people don't keep in mind, and it keeps people it stops people from being confident and going after some of these opportunities. Opportunities are a great way to catapult your career because they show that you've gone a mile that others haven't. And again, as a publisher who may be thinking, I want to make an investment in someone who's worth investing in, showing that you've gotten this award, you've gotten this opportunity, this grant, etc., is something that gives them confidence because you've done something that most of the other people coming to them haven't done. So that's definitely something to invest in, doing the research to know what the opportunities are. You will get 0% of the opportunities that you do not apply for, right? So if you're not applying for it, you're not even in the running. The more you do, the more you increase your chances of being able to get opportunities like that. So I know, for example, the WeNeedDiverseBooks.com from time to time lists opportunities. Another secret of the trade I will share with you is that when you're trying to find opportunities, sometimes there are people who've already done that work that you're trying to do, right? So what are literature prizes that I can submit my book to, or what are grants that may help me to fund my book, or what are workshop opportunities that can help me? Reverse search those things, right? If you were to discover that Penguin Random House has a workshop for diverse authors, then I would search backward to see if HarperCollins has something similar, if Macmillan has something similar, if, I don't know, Tiger Books has something similar. If I were to find 2 or 3 of such opportunities, I would search for them together, right? So I would search for the Penguin Random House Minority Writer Support Group and Lee and Low Books Writer Grant. I will put the 2 of them together in the search to see if it will pull any article where those 2 things have been mentioned together, because any article where those 2 things have been mentioned together will have the other opportunities that you haven't yet discovered. So just being clever with your search in terms of how you find the opportunities is the first starting point, because then you will now have that list that you're about to really dig into and cast your net into to apply for opportunities. There are a number of organizations that have specifically set up opportunities to support diverse authors and illustrators. You can check out the SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They have communities and association societies like all over the world, in cities all over the world, and that's a place where people like you are looking for and sharing information. And we can also check the IBBY, which is the International Board of Books for Young People, which again has kind of like chapters in cities all over the world. You can check out again WeNeedDiverseBooks.com. You can check out there are a number of communities, kind of like Writers Trust, who curate some of these listings, and you can again reverse search those that you find to find others. I think there's the Highlights Foundation that has done some children's writing workshops that I've seen. Yeah, those would be the major ones. If you're an African writer, you can check out Accord Literary. We organize workshops often. I know Akada Festival, I know Ake Book Festival. Whenever those festivals are ongoing, they offer workshop opportunities. Again, in the spirit of reverse engineering, if 2 festivals in Africa are organizing workshops, then many other festivals probably do. Many other book fairs probably do. So then you will look for those book fairs and kind of reverse search to find out what those opportunities are, put them on your calendar, and then go for them when the time comes. So when it comes to marketing and branding, the number one thing is consistency. So when we're starting our literature prize, a literature prize is only as important as people perceive it to be. It's only as important as it is visible. If nobody knows about your literature prize and they're not entering it, you're not important, right? So when it comes to branding, from my experience building our literature prize, you have to be consistent. And what do you have to be consistent in? One, again, secret or tip of the trade, is to be consistent in putting words in people's mouth that you want to be what they say about you, or putting visuals in people's heads that you want to be the visuals that they evoke when they talk about you. So if in our case we wanted to be a prestigious literature prize, we always say that we're a prestigious literature prize. We wanted to be perceived as Pan-African, we always say we're Pan-African. The Golden Baobab Prize is a prestigious Pan-African literature prize that finds and supports. So next time when I ask you, do you know about the Golden Baobab Prize? You heard me say enough that it's a prestigious Pan-African literature prize that, I mean, I'm not going to take those two words out. It's too much work. Oh yeah, the Golden Baobab Prize is a prestigious Pan-African literature prize. That, you know, so it just almost becomes part of who you are, in the context of an upcoming writer who wants to break out. You know, John Smith is an exciting young Black author from Chicago. Exciting young Black author from Chicago. Next time I hear, you know, John Smith, oh yeah, he's that like exciting young man from Chicago, right? You know, those would be the words, because that's the first impression you gave me when I heard about you. So I think first key to branding, one, consistency in terms of using the same thing. Obviously consistency and like delivering, being visible, etc. But the second, consistency in using the language and almost referencing the visual that you want people to have about you. You have to do it subtly, not obnoxiously, but you should kind of have that one-liner that is your thing that people know about you. The other one is that branding and marketing can obviously be incredibly expensive, but it can also be clever and affordable. And that's possible when you backtrack. When you think of who the audience you want to reach is and how you can find them. I remember when we started our literature prize, I went to see the head of an advertising agency in Ghana that I respect so much, Kofi Godfrey. He was a VP at Facebook, he's now at DoorDash. And I was lucky to get like 10 minutes of his time. And I'm like, Kofi, I'm trying to build the Nobel Prize of Children's Literature. I want Golden Baobab to become as well known as the Nobel Prize. Like, how do I get everybody to hear about us? He's like, hold on, girl. You don't need everybody to hear about you. We're standing in front of his office in like a quiet street in Accra, and there was a coconut seller wheeling his wheelbarrow of coconuts past us. And he's like, you know, this coconut seller here, he doesn't know the Nobel Prize. It doesn't make it less prestigious, right? Because you and I know, and the people who matter know. So the big advice there was that in terms of marketing and branding, it's not about everybody knowing about your book or everybody knowing you. It's about the people who matter to your destination, the output, the outcome, the goal that you have set, knowing about the product that you're marketing and knowing about it, what you want them to know about it. So that when it comes to time when they're talking about it, when they're making their purchasing choice, they know what you have told them about the book. So that's the other thing I would share about marketing and branding. I think if I was to share a final thing, it would be latching on to communities or people who have the following that you want, and either have a different segment of it. They could have the same segment of it or have a larger volume of the community that you're looking at, and finding ways to partner and connect with them, right? That's obviously the easiest way, because then their community, you have to provide value, right, to their community, but then that becomes a way of exposing yourself to them. So in the case of our literature prize, when we run it, is that the jury that we would select would be people whose reputations helped to lift up the reputation of our literature prize. So another question that I think, you know, is an FAQ in this space for diverse authors trying to get their first couple of books out is, how do you, if you can obviously decide to go on the self-publishing route, or you can go on the traditional publishing route. If you go on the traditional publishing route, what to do, right? Should you aim for the big publisher? Should you aim to go for it with a small independent press? Should you be finding a literary agent? Where do you start? Again, where you start depends on where you're trying to land, right? What is your what is the output that you're looking for as an author? Is it and this can be a difficult question because, like, what is the output that you want? Like, I want to be successful. I want to be famous. I want to be read everywhere, right? Those would be kind of what comes out of your mind. But what is your why, right? What is your driving force? Like, what wakes you up in the morning and it like almost sparks up this desire? You need to really latch onto that. I'll use myself as an example. When I started our literature prize, and we were getting lots of like entries, and there were times when we would have like crime time and we had to read through all of the stories, and I wasn't driven to like get up and like just read story upon story upon story. Like I would do it because it was my job, but there was drudgery around that. But like here I was like saying I'm like championing children's literature. But my why was not because I wanted to read an abundance of children's books. Obviously, like, I love children's books. But my why was coming from a place of like social justice and like just like indignation about and frustration about the issue. So when I didn't tap into that consistently, I would sometimes lose my way because I would just get stuck in things that weren't the reason why I was excited to do this. So just something as little as like, what is the thing that is waking you up in this desire? Is it that you always dreamed that some child would read your book? In which case, if many children are reading your book and you're not even making a whole bunch of money out of it, you would probably be more satisfied than you were making a lot of money from it. But like, no, you just couldn't find your book anywhere. Nobody talked about your book. So just like looking for that kind of authentic desire and being clear with yourself about your why and being honest with yourself. Sometimes our why can be selfish. Sometimes like you want to be famous, like you want to make money, and we can be ashamed of those whys. But those are your truth, and that's valid for you, and be clear about it and don't veer from it. So if your why is you want to be really famous, you will be very frustrated with a small publisher who may not have a big marketing machinery, right? If your why is that you want to work with a wonderful team of people, you want to feel like you're part of something, you want to feel like you're part of a community, you may feel very lost in a big publishing machine where you're just like a cog in the wheel, right? So that may determine or influence your desire to want to go with a smaller publisher. So do that work of like really figuring out your why. And this for like the 6th or 7th or 10th time I'm saying this, it's like absolutely critical. So obviously agents would be the most direct path to publishers because the publishers know the agents, and the agents are committed to getting your book sold because like they get paid a commission off of your book sale. The question is if agents will pay attention to you. So again, you'll get 0% of those that you don't apply for, right? So just send your work out to as many people as possible, do your research and figure out those who've been successful in reaching agents, what they did, and follow that path. There are multiple ways to reach people, multiple ways to get people to pay attention to you. You can reach out to people directly on their websites. You can reach out to them on social media. Follow them. You can be a little bit more creative in getting their attention. Follow them. Be posting content that's relevant to them. You can tag them in some of those posts so that they know about you. They see that you're someone who's serious about your career. The point is, this is a business, again, demand and supply. Like, you want to, like, as a publisher and also as an agent, like, we're committed to investing in people who are doing half of the work themselves. Like, you don't want to be carrying a debt with you on a journey where you're investing your own time and your own money. Like, I want to see that you're as hungry for the results as I am. And that goes a long way. Your persistence, your commitment, you're showing that you're eager to make this possible. You're willing to be a great team player goes a long way. one thing that I think people can underestimate, because as artists, we can all get a little into our art, and ego can sometimes get in the way a little bit. Nobody likes to work with a difficult person. Nobody likes a difficult author. Nobody likes a difficult illustrator. It is not in your benefit to let ego get in the way of your work. Obviously, you protect your art, yes, but you've got to realize that it is a team effort, and people want to work with people who are pleasant and who are willing to reach professional compromises for the sake of the project and not for the sake necessarily of ego. So keep that in mind. I worked on a book once, and the experience with the creative was just so difficult that regardless of the creative's talent, like when we were done, I just wasn't willing to go down that path again. And so just like attitude shot that creative's potential of making more books, in the foot. So that would definitely be something to pay attention to. I think I'll end this conversation just with a lot of encouragement. We are the change makers we've been waiting for. We are the writers. We are the editors. We are the illustrators. We are the publishers that we have been waiting for. And if there's something we're unhappy about, and we are not creating it, it's not going to happen, right? People are investing heavily in all kinds of incredible technology for the world. We may not be investing our money, but we can definitely invest our passion. We can invest our time. We can invest our organizing skills. We can invest our creativity into this space, and do for our culture, do for our books, for our stories, for our voices what should be, the institution that has, we believe, institutional racism that we feel has kept books by diverse authors from being published will not be dismantled by the people within the system. They'll be dismantled by people like you and me who are dissatisfied with the status quo, right? They will be dismantled by consumers like you and me who are determined to let their dollar be activist dollars, right? To buy the kinds of books that change the game. So, I just want to kind of rally us all together. It is possible for there to be a world where our books are mainstream, our children seeing themselves in wonderful characters that they grew up loving, that all children around the globe grew up loving. Is not a reality. We're going to space, guys. This is totally doable, and it's only doable if we can keep the fire alive, if we keep focused, if we are strategic and not just dreamy in how we approach this goal. So thank you so much for being a part of this video, for listening, for watching, and you can find us on online. You can find our website www.africanbureau.com. You can find us on social media at African Bureau HQ. You can find Accord Literary at www.accordliterary.com as well. You can find Accord Literary on social media. You can find Golden Baobab online as well. So thank you so much, and look forward to connecting online.